right, welcome back to another episode of the Owner Ops Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Gray. Got Carl Rosenberg with ARE joining us today. Carl, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, so we were just jumping into it. You were going to jump into telling us a bit about the start of your business. You said you started before COVID. How did you get into the business?
Well, it's a funny story. Actually, I got into it, I wouldn't say by accident, but I kind of grew it off of everything from a stump grinder. It's odd to say that, but I started off with a stump grinder. At the time, a lot of tree companies around us, these guys had chipper trucks and, $100,000 chippers. And, they had all kinds of equipment, but a lot of these tree guys didn't have stump grinders. So it kind of dawned on me one day. I found a stump grinder at an auction for 10 grand. I was like, as a side gig, I'll go grind some stumps with tree guys. So I started calling up tree companies like, hey, you need some stumps grounded down? I was charging, I think, $50 a stump at the time or something like that. Or maybe I was doing it by the inch. I don't recall. It was close to 5 years ago. And, I got into it with a stump grinder. And then from the stump grinder, I just kind of grew it from a stump grinder to I had a little Kubota subcompact tractor with a little grapple on it and a little backhoe on the back of it. I got that maybe a few months later after my stump grinder. And I was just kind of doing little cleanup jobs, little small brush jobs and cleanup jobs. And that's kind of where I get more involved into it starting from that stump grinder, essentially. And then I kind of grew it into, I ran a 299 with a mulcher on it. And then I eventually get into an excavator with a mulcher head on it. And now I got a Cat 953 that was doing land clearance. All equipment I have now all started from that little $10,000 stump grinder. I was just going around just grinding up stumps for guys.
That is awesome. I've heard some people talking about stump grinders as like a very specific niche focus to offer. One of the guys was actually talking about it. I saw it online the other day. He's like, man, I feel like buying a stump grinder and just going around to other tree companies and telling them that you have a stump grinder and being a subcontractor for the tree companies could be a good business. He's like an idea guy, so he always talks about it on his podcast. Anyways, I thought that was interesting. I'm curious to know how you went about getting your first jobs with that stump grinder.
So getting the first jobs with stump grinder were pretty much all with the tree companies. And then I started marketing stuff on Facebook Marketplace. At the time on Facebook Marketplace, you can put an ad up on Facebook Marketplace without having it sponsored and doing all the stuff you have to do through Ads Manager they got going on now. They kind of cut that stuff out. But back in the day, you used to be able to actually just put almost like a phony ad up, and people would just call me from that Facebook ad. I guess they were just searching stump grinders, and I had my little pictures up there and a little bit of a pricing sheet kind of attached to another picture. And they would just message me through Facebook, and I would figure out where they're at and go and quote jobs. And I was kind of dabbling with a little bit of the Facebook side of things there for a while, getting work for it.
That's awesome. But you said you did target the tree companies too?
I targeted tree companies to start off with. So when I kind of dove into it, I just started calling around some tree companies and just saying, hey, you need a guy that can grind stumps. At the time, that market really wasn't very saturated with stump grinders. So there really wasn't a lot of people that had them, which is kind of odd, I found. Now the market is just saturated. Everybody and their mom has a stump grinder, and a lot of firefighters do stump grinding on the side now. So there's a lot of firefighters out there that do stump grinding as a side job, which, hey, that's great. But yeah, it just started just cold calling tree companies and hey, you need a stump grinder. Or if I was just driving around to go grind another stump, I see a tree guy, out on the side of the road cutting trees. I just go right up to him and talk to him. Hey, what are y'all doing with these stumps? Oh, we don't know yet. We haven't discussed with the customers. Y'all have a stump grinder? No, we don't have a stump grinder. I was like, cool. Well, you mind if I give you my card, or if I can give you a price on it, you can sell it to the customer and pay me, or I can, work directly with them. And I just kind of did it that way, by just driving around and seeing guys doing tree work and stopping by and talking to them.
Man, it's as easy as that, huh? It's I think sometimes we just overcomplicate business, but at the end of the day, you found a niche. I see this a lot. It's a lot of the tree companies don't actually own their own stump grinders. And so they're just, I feel like that's a piece of equipment that is rented consistently.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Cause I think the reason why those guys rent them is because the maintenance on them. The maintenance isn't too bad. You will eat through some teeth pretty quick. And for some reason, it's little bitty little teeth that grind those stumps up. They're kind of expensive, they're like $15-$20 a tooth. And you get 30 on a flywheel. It adds up kind of quick. But that's the only thing I could think of. The reason why tree guys just didn't want to really get into the stump side. I guess they didn't find it profitable. I did, I was doing most of the stump jobs for, $500 or $600 on average. I guess they just thought, 2 more hours worth of the work or 3 more hours worth of work just wasn't worth $600 to them. But when you're banging out 2 or 3 of those types of jobs in one day, you're making $1,500-$1,600 in a day off of a $10,000 stump grinder. So your ROI is like really, really good if you average that every single day and just keep on moving through with it. So that's how I looked at it. I was like, they're turning down these little $600 jobs, but do 3 of them a day, it adds up pretty quick.
Yeah, that is a great ROI, especially as an owner-operated business. I mean, I'm sure at this time it was just you, right?
Yeah, at the time it was just me. So I was just kind of running my stump grinder. And at the time I was still, I was still doing construction, and I was an electrician at the time too. So I was still kind of dabbling in the construction. So it was kind of a side gig for me. So I didn't just dive right in like, I'm going to make a living out of this. So I had a strategy that I used, and I implemented my strategy. It worked really well. And I didn't, shortly after getting into stump grinding, learn how to market it and cold call companies. It didn't take long after where I was like, you know what? I'm tired of pulling wire. I'm tired of doing construction work. I think I'm done. So I just I pulled out of that whole entire industry that I was in for over a decade. I got tired of it being in the industry. So I was looking for a change anyways.
If I had the math correct, that means you had to do 20 jobs to pay off that stump grinder.
Pretty much, yeah. It paid for itself. Well, between maintenance and fuel and my insurance and some other stuff I was kind of spending money on at the time, I think I had that stump grinder pretty much paid for itself within about 2 months, roughly.
That is awesome. What kind of machine did you buy?
It was a Toro. So it was the STX 26, which is a track unit. It's a 26 horsepower Kawasaki motor in it. And it was a great little stump grinder. I mean, I wouldn't put it on if you put it on like a 36-inch oak, yeah, it's going to struggle. But there's really not a lot in our area. There's really not a lot of people cutting down 36-inch oak trees. 9 times out of 10, the trees I was grinding down were mostly pine. We have a lot of pine in Georgia, and most of those pines are, anywhere between 12 to 18 inches. Now, pine is a very soft wood anyways. So I was grinding those stumps down in 15 minutes per stump on a pine stump. So I try to stay away from the oaks if I could, because those are typically when you get up into the the 75 horsepower, 100 horsepower, the diesel power stump grinders. Those are the big boy ones that get, the bigger trees like that. So I kind of veered off to that side of it, because I was just like, isn't that worth my time sitting here for 4 hours to do a stump for, $200 or $400 or whatever the price would have been at the time.
That's awesome, man. It's a Toro STX, you said?
Yeah, I think that's the model number. I think it was an STX 26.
Okay, I've got it pulled up here.
Right.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up here. This is the one that our rental company has here locally. I'm going to share my screen here so our viewers can see this. I do rent this one on I say a consistent basis. We've got a Fecon mulching head for our skid steer, but on these smaller residential jobs, like where we can't get the skid steer, or if we're close to a house or something, we will rent this. Man, this is awesome. 10 grand, paid it off roughly in 2 months. It's an awesome little business model. And so this just jump started you into where you are now. So let's take the next step. Like you start grinding stumps. Where's the next opportunity that you come across?
The next opportunity I came across after I was doing stump grinding was, I guess you can call it like a little bit of brush clearing or brush cleanup. And that's what had my little Kubota tractor, because right there at the time, my wife and I, we moved to a new house, I had a little bit of property, and the front of it was kind of an overgrown pasture. Like the person we bought it from let this property kind of go. I mean, they pretty much let it go to hell, essentially. It was overgrown. I had that little farm tractor. I was like, I'm going to buy this little farm tractor. I got my stump grinder. I'm going to clean this front pasture up. So I ended up buying this little Kubota BX, BX 23S, which I actually still own that tractor to this day. I used it to cut my grass now because it has a belly mower on it. And that little BX 23S had a little backhoe in the back of it. I had it with a third function valve and a grapple. And I was like, well, I'm going to clean this pasture up. So I started kind of cleaning into that pasture, working through with it. And I was like, man, I wonder if I can kind of do some stuff like this. I bought this tractor for our property. And I wonder if I can start cleaning up other people's pastures. So that's kind of where I got into the next step. So there for a very short period of time, I was using that little Kubota tractor. I hit like a small little pasture that needed to be cut. I had a little 4-foot brush cutter in the back of it. And I was like cutting power line easement for people that owned over in a different county from ours. And I was just like, man, I don't know what to charge for this. I think I'm going to start off like $75 an hour or something like that, or maybe $50 an hour. I can't remember at the time. Next thing I start brush mowing little fields and patches with it, just small little, 2-3 acre fields. It only took me a few hours to do each one. And I just kept growing it from there to see what kind of equipment can I get into next. And I just kept stepping it up. And I kind of did it really fairly fast, realistically, because between the stump grinder and the little Kubota tractor, by the time I got into that and started brush mowing stuff, we're only talking about like maybe a 6 to 8 month time frame difference. So it's kind of like one after the other. And then I was starting to do a little bit more bigger jobs after that too. Um, and that's where I got my first skid steer, and that was a Cat 226 as a wheel loader. It was a 226 B3. Bought that at auction too. And it was a great unit for just doing grapple work and tree work with it. It wasn't a track system, which kind of slowed me down a lot of the time, especially in the terrain we have in Georgia with all of our mud and stuff. But it did help get me kind of started into it. And then from that 226 B3 I had, that's when I got my first 299. And I was like, hey, I want to get into forestry mulching. You know, like instead of just doing it the hard way, I just want to mulch all this stuff. And that's kind of where I got into the mulcher from there. And that was probably back in 2000. I bought that one in 21 or 20, maybe it was 20. I can't remember the dates exactly. But anyways, it was shortly after. So I kind of kept bumping it up to bigger, better stuff in a relatively quick time period, essentially.
Now, did you buy that 299 new, or did you buy it used?
It was used. Yeah, the first one was used. It was a 2000 and I think it was a 17 model. It was a D2. So yeah, it was a 2017 model.
That the first one though was a Cat
226.
226, and that's a wheeled machine, correct?
Right. That's one of the smallest wheel machines that Cat makes. And it was a 2014 model. I bought it at auction. It was used, obviously, too. But the thing had 600 hours on it, man. 600 hours. Came from a Cat dealer out of South Carolina. It was a rental unit, I believe. And it was like immaculate, like brand new looking almost. It's crazy. I think I'm gonna pick that thing up for like $20,000.
Wow. Okay, so you bought that one for 20,000, and at this point, okay, so here's what I'd like to know, because I know our listeners are going to want to know. A big question I get all the time is equipment purchasing. Do you buy new or do you buy used? So I do want to take the time to go over your thought process of how you bought that. But at the same time, as we layer in each piece of equipment in your story, I want to understand, where were the jobs coming from and how were you getting the jobs that were driving those equipment purchases? So you said you moved more kind of into the brush clearing piece at that point. With the Kubota tractor, you've now bought the 226 wheeled machine. Where were these jobs coming from, and how were you finding those jobs?
So once I got into the brush clearing side of things and I got that 226, I was working out on the West Georgia area. And out there in West Georgia, they had a big timber tract that they divided up, and they were pretty much selling like little 10-acre to 5-acre lots off. Well, I was still advertising on Facebook Marketplace, you know, for land clearing and all that kind of stuff. I think I had a Facebook page. I already set a Facebook page up that day one, but I was still able to like post on Marketplace, kind of like a sponsored ad. And, you know, I got a customer that called me from it that was out in that area. He's like, hey, you know, about this 5-acre lot out here in West Georgia. I need to get it cleared. Well, when I got out there and noticed, like, man, there's like 400 acres out here. And these guys just took this timber tract and they divided it all up into little smaller tracts. And this is all like, you know, little 3 to 6 inch pine that they planted. I guess a deal went south, so on and so forth. So, you know, they had like a big parking lot out there where people were coming to look at this property. Like, hey, there's property for sale out here for a really good price, actually, for that area. You know, I went up there one day when the guy was up there trying to sell it all off, and they had all these different side by sides, and they were driving around showing all these different people from the city, like, hey, you can buy this land for $50,000, and so on and so forth. And when I did that first lot up there, I was like, man, I'm gonna get some yard signs. I'm gonna start sticking them down the road. Hey, we do driveways, we do clearing, we do all this stuff. And that's where I pretty much did a lot of those lots up there, just because I had those yard signs. I paid, you know, $5 a piece for. I had them made up. They look good. They're printed, you know, the color, all that kind of stuff on it. And I just start sticking those signs in the road, you know, because there's, you know, I think they were selling off like, you know, 60 or 70 different lots up in that area. So I just put the yard signs in the road, or the stop sign down the road. And next thing you know, I started getting multiple phone calls from it. Like, hey, we just bought this property. We're from, you know, Atlanta. We bought this property out in West Georgia towards Alabama. We saw your sign in the road. And that's kind of where it just kept continue to grow, was with, you know, yard signs, and just kind of getting on Facebook and just posting up some stuff on Facebook and waiting for the phone calls to kind of roll through. And then as I started to grow the business, you know, I grew it into, all right, well, now we're brush clearing, we're doing stump grinding, we're doing forestry mulching now. And I started thinking more and more about it, like, man, if I really want to get in with builders, I really need to get an excavator and a loader, because at the end of the day, forestry mulching really isn't I mean, land clearing technically. To me, I don't classify land clearing until I take my loader in there. I'm pushing up trees with the stump, whole entire trees, grubbing it up, grading back out. To me, that's more like land clearing in my classification. I know a lot of guys are going to hate against me on that one. Oh, land clearing is forestry mulching, but that's what I classify as land clearing. So that's probably running a little bit on about it, but yeah, it's pretty much just kept growing it to bigger, better equipment and just kept doing the hustle, yard signs, Facebook, stopping by job sites, talking to builders, passing out my card, and just kind of just, running it that way and keep it going.
Those yard signs, I'm very curious to hear what people put on their yard signs. What text, like what words, what phone number, like did you put your logo?
I kept it really simple. Yeah, so I kept it really simple. I just did the logo because you got to brand your business. So I just did the logo, phone number, big bold letters. And then underneath that phone number, I just did, forestry mulching, land clearing, gravel or site prep, that kind of stuff. So I kept it real simple with big bold letters. I didn't put too much stuff on it where if someone was driving by, they wouldn't be able to grab their attention quick enough because you have too many small letters. But I kept it real simple. I did a couple bullet points of what I can do, phone number and logo, and that was it. I kept it real simple.
I want the listeners to hear that again. It's like very, very simple on yard signs. I see like way too many people trying to get so creative with it. It's like I would even go so far as to say like on ours, we've even decreased the size of our logo because I believe to the customer, it's like if they've never heard about us before, all they really care about is like if I'm targeting a fire mitigation customer, like all that customer cares about is the fact that there's fire mitigation and a number to call right there.
Pretty much. That's how I look at it.
And so like it sounds like you have taken the same approach. It's like big bold letters for the services you offer and big bold letters in the phone number. And I've talked about this before, but I'm glad you brought it up. Like these yard signs are not expensive in any way, shape, or form. You can order them online. Where did you order yours from? Do you even remember?
We have a local company in the downtown area where we live at, and that's all. It's a print shop. So, I like to support local businesses besides buying online. So, I kind of call around and find out who's got what. And a lot of times it's faster and cheaper to use a local business because you can kind of go in there and tell them what you want. You go right when they're done with it, you go pick it up. You don't have to worry about shipping. And to me, time is money. So I didn't want to waste time waiting to get online and trying to figure it all out and wait for them to ship it to me. So I did everything with local businesses with the yard signs.
Love it. So yard signs, like big reason as to why you were able to grow during that period. So you had the 226 at that point. Then I want to jump into the next piece of equipment you bought was the Cat 299. And for those of you who are listening, the Cat 299 is Cat's version of, it's the machine you want to mulch with, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's one of their, the D2. So it was kind of really back then, that 2017 model really wasn't set up for mulching. It did okay. The D2 series had a little problem overheating, though. That's the only problem about it because they had to change a couple of things around the motor. But it got me through to get started with it, though. And I didn't keep that one very long. I bought a used one with a mulcher head on it. I think it only had like 1,700 hours on it. I can't remember. It was like 1,700 hours on it. I didn't keep it very long because I started having problems with it. Luckily, I did buy the extended warranty, and Cat was going to cover it, but it was going to be down for so long. I was like, man, I can't afford this. Like, I just got into this mulching thing. I'm only a few months into it. Like, I really need to get something different. So anyways, my Cat dealer is a really good Cat dealer. They took really good care of me. I was really happy about it when I was having problems with that used one I bought. I don't think they inspected it properly, and that's the reason why I was having issues with it. But at that point, I was already getting phone calls for forestry mulching. I didn't want to lose out on opportunities. And I was like, you know what? I think I can get this to carry on. I can get more mulching. Let me just go buy a brand new one. So I bought I think it was a 21 model. I still have that machine today, too. It's a 21 model. It was the D3. It had the LM2 package on it. So it has the hydraulic oil cooler on top. Has the saddlebag tanks on it. Had every option I could outfit that thing with. It had it on there. And that's where that's where I started at with like, now we're a mulching company. We can get mulching going. Let's run it. Like I got a brand new machine under warranty, runs great. And I just ran with it that way.
Cool. So you did buy used on the first one. How much did you pay used for that machine? The 1,700 hours.
I think that one with the mulcher head on it, I think it was around about 120 with the mulcher head on it.
The used machine with 1,700 hours?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was around 120 with it.
Okay. And that was, you bought that from the cat dealer?
Hmm.
So did Cat offer financing on that machine on a used piece?
They did. And that's why I went
Okay.
with Cat too, because their financing was a little bit easier. I talked to like Deere and Bobcat, and they were using like Wells Fargo as their deal, as their banks and stuff like that. And I know when you're a new business, it's really hard to get started because they're going to look at your books for the last couple of years. And I was like, man, I'm like a year or so into it. At this point, they're not going to want to finance me like Wells Fargo and the big banks. That's why I ended up with Cat, because they have in-house financing. Their Cat's a multi-billion-dollar company, so they can afford to finance their own equipment. So that first one was financed through Cat Financial, and they approved me. And I was like, I didn't think I was going to approve, to be honest with you. I was like, man, I'll just try it. He's like, well, just fill it out. Let's get it going. Let's just try it. And I tried it. It came back and says, hey, we can get you that mulcher if you want it. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. So it was a no-brainer at the time. I was like, yeah, I'll take it. Let's just get it.
All right. And are you willing to talk terms for our listeners as to just like a idea for what did those financing terms look like, and then what did that put you a monthly payment at?
I don't really recall on the first 1099 I bought. I think it was a 48-month term. I want to say it was like right at about $2,000 a month for the payment, somewhere in
And
that
that
area,
was
if I remember
that
right.
included the mulching head?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, they included the mulching head with it too, because they were able to finance the mulching head on it, and it's a Cat mulching head. Because everybody's pushing the whole sea moth thing, but I think at the time Cat wouldn't finance like a sea moth mulching head at the time. It's not a Cat product, and Cat wants to push their products, obviously. So I just bought the Cat mulching head, which pretty much is the rebranded FAE head. Essentially, there's anything different about it besides stickers. Is all it really is.
How did you like that mulching head?
Well, it was my first mulching head, so I didn't really have anything to compare to. I did run a sea moth head briefly with one of my friends that kind of like, hey, pushed me to get into the mulching business. He was out of the West Georgia area. He came out and helped me out on the job, and he was running a Cat with a sea moth head on it. I ran his briefly. I was like, all right, let me run this and get into it. As soon as I got in that saddle and tried it out, I was like, I gotta get me one of these things. Like, I gotta get me my own mulcher set up. Like, I'm buying one. And I didn't really run it long enough on the sea moth versus the Cat head to really like have an experience to say, all right, well, this one's more efficient, this one cuts better, so on and so forth. I didn't really have enough time in the seat to tell the difference, honestly. So I didn't, and I still run a Cat head to this day, believe it or not.
And I want to go back to that used piece of equipment. So you decide that that's not the piece of equipment for your operation for a number of reasons. One, it was going to be down. What was the situation like transitioning into the new piece, and how did that work with Cat?
Actually, it worked out pretty well. I think Cat sold me a little bit of a dud of a unit, essentially, because right when I got that thing and started mulching with it, it was it didn't have problems like since day one, but it was having slower issues here. It had a fuel problem. I think the turbo was going out, and I think that was the end result of that machine, was the turbo actually ended up going out in it. And they claim that this is supposed to be a certified, maybe I may have less than 17 hours one. I think it was considered like a certified used machine, which is supposed to have certain conditions that they test the oils and all that stuff on. And I don't really think they did with it, honestly. And I was like, I gotta get another machine. So I was kind of like pushing against time, kind of just, I wouldn't say I went in there guns blazing into the Cat dealer, but I told them how I felt about it. I was like, hey, man, y'all told me this is a used machine. I get it's used. I bought this in a warranty with it. You said it was certified. This thing's been broken more than it has been running for me. I'm out here trying to make a living with this machine. I can't afford this anymore. So they actually ended up buying that machine back from me. For the 3 months that I had it, roughly, I think it was about 3 months that I had that machine. They ended up buying it back. Even though I made the payments, they ended up discounting a new machine for me for a pretty good little rate on the new machine. That's when they put me in that 21 model, $299. And I think they just took really good care of the situation that I was in. They understood that the machine they sold to me was kind of garbage. I think the motor was about to go out. I know the turbo was done, so they had to tow it back up there to get it off the trailer. And I think they just felt really bad about it. So they made it right. And they didn't have any 299s that I wanted on their lot. So I think they ended up doing like a dealer trade with like another company, another Cat dealer, and brought one in for me. They had it within like a week and had me back up and running. And that's when I had to redo all the financing and all that stuff for the new machine. And the new one, I had a lot more money involved in it, but at least that was a new machine I knew was going to work. And that's the same machine I use to this day. Haven't got rid of it yet.
Okay. And how much was that machine?
That one out the door. So, like I said, that was an LM2. It's a D3. So it had the saddlebags. It had the hydraulic cooler on it. I think I didn't put in Y tracks on it too. At the time, I was like, let me get zigzag tracks because everybody's like, oh, go zigzag, which come to find out, those are pretty much garbage in the type of terrain that we're in now. I had a cat mulching head. I actually went down to a smaller mulching head. The first one I had was a 418C. And for that 3 months I was getting a run, and I was like, man, this head is just too wide for this machine. Like, kind of trying to get in between trees. I wasn't a big fan of it. So I dropped it down to the 415C, which is a little bit smaller. I also had bite limiters on this one too. So with everything, with the Y tracks they put on it, the mulching head, the actual machine itself was $171,000.
And what were the terms for the financing on that?
That was a 60-month term at the time. It worked out to my advantage at the time, which I know you're paying for it. It was 0% for 60 months was the deal that Cat was using. And my other machine was like, 4 or 5% interest because it was used. So I was kind of saving money on interest, which I think everybody, all the listeners everybody knows that, they're going to put the interest back into that machine. They have a cash price and they have a finance price. So they're going to add it back in there, but still, it was kind of nice to have it. But yeah, it ended up being in the 60-month term, 0%, and the payment on it's just a little bit less than $3,000 a month.
With the mulcher included?
With the mulcher included, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. What is your... I got sidetracked because you mentioned the zigzag tracks. I was looking for a picture on my phone to see if I could find it, but we had zigzag tracks. We got it for the winter time for the snow because they're saying like it has better traction in the snow. And then we ended up just running them in the summer. We didn't take them off and put our dirt tracks back on. And I have a picture somewhere, and I hope I can find it by the time we edit this podcast because we'll do a screenshot of it. But yeah, it basically ripped in half on one of our jobs. Like, I heard this pop, and I stopped and I went out and I was like, holy crap. And this thing was literally just ripped, like almost all the way in half.
Using zigzags, same reason, man. I delaminated one of those things. It pretty much separated the entire track. And I was like, well, that's not good.
No, it's not good at all. You get the $299. Now, what kind of jobs are you doing at the point of this purchase? You said this was what, 2021?
Yeah, this is 2021. So for about 2 years, well, actually not even 2 years, really. Beginning of 21. So for, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years, I was just running the forestry mulcher. Man, I was out there every day, 5 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, just banging out mulching jobs one after the other, as much as I could do, as fast as I could do them. And that's all I did for almost a year and a half, just trying to make that money back on that machine as quick as I could before I decided to let's get another piece of equipment and expand the business. I just ran solo,
So at this point, it was just you and you were focusing on that forestry mulcher. What type of customers were you servicing at that point?
Mostly at that time, I was servicing more agriculture type customers, like the clients that had anywhere from 10 to 100 acres, and I was really just mulching out properties like that, like going through and thinning out the woods. I had a bunch of clients with 10-acre lots. They're like, hey, our woods are overgrown. And I used to sell them on I'm going to make it look like a park when I'm finished. Like, I'm going to keep all the big pines. We're going to get rid of all the underbrush. When I'm finished mulching this area out, it is going to look like you're in a park, essentially. Like, it's going to be the most beautiful, thinned out piece of woods you'll ever see in your life. And I was just selling the whole concept of like, we're going to make it look like a park for you. And it just kind of caught on to people's attention. They're like, yeah, that's what I want. I want my front yard, which is all wooded, my backyard, which is all wooded. I want it to be thinned out. I want it to look really, really pretty when it's done. And those are the type of jobs I was doing with the mulcher. And I was, doing, videos, and I was flying drones up to make videos and stuff like that. And at this point in time, this is when I was actually advertising on Facebook through Ads Manager, and I was, boosting ads and pushing out boosted campaigns and message now campaigns. And I had these drone videos that I was shooting drone shots with that are up high, and people were like, man, that's really cool. And those videos that I was creating were they're getting thousands and thousands of views, and the next thing you know, they just started rolling out with more and more messages. More and more work came through.
That's awesome. So you're just cranking on forestry mulching jobs for what, 2 years?
Yeah, roughly, maybe a little bit less than 2 years, but yeah, I kind of just stuck it in with the mulching there for a little while until I wouldn't say bored with it, but I was ready for kind of the next step, I guess you can say.
You make it sound so easy.
Yeah, it wasn't though. The back end of it sounds like it's easy, but there was a lot of hustle in between it. There was a lot of cold calling in between it. There was a lot of trying to get in with builders, because that was my end goal, was like, hey, I want to get in with a builder and I want to start clearing out lots. I want to start digging out basements, and I want to get into that side of things. Like at the time, the reason I want to get into with the builders because everybody started buying mulchers around my area, and our area is very saturated with forestry mulching guys. Like these guys just go out and brand new trucks, brand new trailers, brand new mulchers. I mean, they probably got $400,000 just in truck, trailer, and equipment, easy. And they started kind of undercutting the price down a little bit. And I was friends with a lot of other mulcher guys, and we kind of came together and collabed. Like, hey, if everybody just stays at this day rate, mulching will be fine. That way nobody's undercutting somebody. You're not going to just drive the market down, because usually what happens is when you get other companies or other guys that want to get into mulching, they're like, well, I just need to make a payment. I'm going to go out and mulch for $1,000 a day. Everybody else in my industry that I was friends with and still friends with, we're charging $2,000 a day. So that's kind of hard to compete against. But the problem is when those guys come in, they drive the market, they just dive it off, and they mess it all up for everybody else.
And is that still your day rate?
Yeah, it is. So I do anywhere from $1,600 a day to $2,000 a day. Just depends on how big it is. A lot of times here lately, I'll be getting smaller jobs, like little 1 acre job that I'll go thin out. And as a business owner, I just don't feel right charging somebody $2,000 for something that took me 5 or 6 hours, which I know I probably should anyways, because that's like overhead to clear and all that fun stuff. But sometimes I'll just go in and hit them up with $1,600, or if something took a little bit less than I quoted it for, I'll discount it out. Because I always believe that just being straightforward with people and honest with people has got me a long ways, to where it's got me a lot of repeat customers. It's got me a lot of referrals being that way. Like, hey, I quoted you $2,500. I knocked it out a lot faster than I thought. I'm going to drop it down to $1,800. And they're like, oh, well, we're expected to pay $2,500. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to charge $1,800 because I'm happy with what I made, and you're happy as a client, and you're going to tell your friends that I was just being straight up with you about the pricing.
Now, is that how you bid out all your jobs? You do you have a day rate in mind and then you give an estimate, or do you tell the customer up front, hey, $2,000 a day is my day rate, and I think it's going to take me X amount, or I'll let you take it from here. How do you estimate your jobs on forestry mulching?
So I estimate it by the day rate, and I know how fast I can mulch and how many acres I can mulch in a day. And I've gotten to where the point, like my 299 I have now, that thing's got well north of 3,000 hours on it. Like I got over 3,000 hours of mulching time in that one tractor. So I've gotten to the point where I've got it pretty well dialed in to where I can see a piece of property. I can look at the terrain. I know the density of it. I'm like, okay, I can do this in a day, and I just do a day rate, because the day rate kind of keeps you safe, versus bidding it out, which I know bidding out, you're more profitable, but the day rate does kind of keep you safe, because the problem I was having trying to bid out the jobs, saying instead of doing $2,000 a day and doing like $2,500 for the job, is that customers would have you do a lot of extra stuff that wasn't a part of the original bid. And it ended turning into almost like an argument, almost not like an argument, but they're like, well, what about this area over here? I'm like, well, we never discussed that area. Oh yeah, we did. I'm like, no, we really didn't actually, so they would try to add on a bunch of extra stuff to kind of, justify getting their money's worth out of you. And that's why I stopped bidding it by the job and just start doing it by the day. So that way, hey, I'm here from 8 hours. When that tractor turns on my trailer, before I back it off, it turns on. That's when the clock starts. So it starts when that tractor turns on in the morning. You get 8 hours. And I always tell people that, hey, within an 8 hour time frame, I do stop for a few minutes for lunch, which I'm still there for a day. That's included in the time. If I got to sharpen up my teeth, or if I got to add fuel or blow out an air filter, that's all in an 8 hour day. And it keeps me safe, because if they want something extra done, I'm like, well, cool, I got an hour left on the clock. I can do whatever you need to. If you want to pay more after the 8 hours, then it's $250 an hour or $200 an hour, or whatever it is at the time. So it just kind of keeps you in a safe zone, to where it keeps you trying to take advantage of your time, essentially.
And you don't have any pushback on that from your customers? I mean, it seems like you're booking plenty of jobs doing it that way.
Yeah, I don't really get any pushback. I think people like the day rate too. Every now and then you'll get a client that wants to do a bidded job, but typically the guys that want the job bidded out are usually your builders and developers. Your average homeowner, they're cool with the day rate, as long as you explain how your day rate works. I did get another client. I did a job about a month or so ago, and I told her I was doing a day rate. She's like, well, how's your day rate work? I said, it works when my machine turns on. We walk the property for 10 minutes in the morning. I come back to my machine. As soon as that machine turns on, that's when the clock starts. And she's like, well, I had another guy out here, last year, and he said he does an 8 hour day, but he not just slacking off for, it ended up being like 6 hours is what I kind of measured out. He was in and out in 6 hours. He charged for an 8 hour day. I said, well, I'm sorry that happened to you, but that's not the way I do business. Like I'll give you a full 8 hours. And if I finish it up early and you want something else done, just let me know and I'll do it. So I always used to carry with my mulcher, I carried my bucket and my grapple. And that's how you keep that money in your pocket is if I finish up in 6 hours, well, a lot of my clients have gravel driveways. I'm like, hey, I'm done in 6 hours. Do you mind if I fill my bucket on for another hour and a half, 2 hours? I can fix your driveway up and regrade it out. You're paying for the day rate. Let me just, redo this for you or refix this yard. And I switch out attachments and just keep on working until they get everything they wanted to get done under that $2,000 day rate.
That's great. Your customers got to love you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it helps out a lot when you're providing a service for somebody. I always felt like, hey, you're providing a $2,000 day rate service. If you finish up in 6 hours, you have two options. Either you discount it back, which I've done that before too. I finished up in like 5 hours, and I thought something was gonna take me 8 hours. I'll discount it back to make sure that they're getting their money's worth, or I'll ask them if they need something else done with either the grapple or a bucket. Like sometimes people have brush piles or logs that I can't mulch up, or logs I can need to stack, or a gravel driveway I can just regrade out and smooth it back up and fix the crown on it and do that kind of stuff. So I would find something to do to make sure that I'm making $2,000 a day, so that keeps money in my pocket, but they're also getting what they deserve as far as what they're paying you for too.
So how has your business model developed? Like, are you still operating under this like skid steer, mulcher, grading, $2,000 a day service business model, or have you moved more into the land clearing side of things with what you mentioned earlier in the podcast?
Both. So I'm still doing the $2,000 a day for the mulching, and then when it comes to clearing a lot and land clearing, 9 times out of 10, those usually have site plans with them. So those I bid out by the job, because if you have a site plan out, I know how much the silt fence needs to go in. I know how much area we're clearing. You can only clear with the site plan that we're called for. So if it's a 3/4 of an acre or a half acre, that's real easy to bid that kind of stuff out because you can't bid more what the site plan is calling for. So when it comes down to that kind of stuff, when land clearing kind of stuff, it's I do it all by the plans, and I have a contract wrote up to where, hey, I follow the plan step by step. I put X amount of the silt fencing in that the plans require. I'm gonna clear this much land as the plans require, and I'm gonna bid this all out by the job. And I stick with those plans the entire way through. And it's just like doing it by the job is easy when you have a site plan because you can't go outside the site plans. That builder can't come in like, hey, can you do this and this? And like, that's not on the site plans. Like, no, I cannot do that. I can do it as a change order, but I can't clear more than what the site plans require from the county. So that's when it comes to land clearing, I do it all by the job. When it comes to like mulching or excavator work, typically I run that by a day rate typically. And it's just a safer way to keep homeowners happy on a day rate. You keep your builders happy on a bid style type of job.
You mentioned an excavator. After you're running that 299 skid steer with the mulcher for a couple of years, when do you layer in the next piece of equipment?
That's when I layered in the excavator. The one I have now is a 22 model. I bought it in June of 22. And right when I got the excavator, that's when I kind of really started doing more land clearing. And the way I started doing land clearing was I would go through with the mulcher, I'd mulch it all out, thin it all up. And then I have a friend of mine that does more logging stuff. So he would go through and cut all the trees out, log it all out, take the wood, take all the logs on a log truck. The only thing I was left with was pretty much stumps and a pile of slash. And the slash, I would mulch it down. After I got it mulched down, I put it up in a pile, and then I take my excavator, I started digging stumps out with the excavator. And I was like, okay, well, there's got to be a faster way of doing this. I did it for about a year, roughly, probably a little bit less than that. But that's how it started with the actual land clearing, clearing out for lots for these builders. So I was just doing it with a skid steer, my bucket, my mulcher, and an excavator digging the stumps out. And I would put all the slash and the mulch inside of dumpsters. Stumps went inside of dumpsters and were cleared and were grubbed. And I was able to do, pads. And I dug out a few basements with a 299 and a 306. It's not easy, but it can be done. You can dig out a decent sized basement with those two machines. But I've done it quite a few times, believe it or not, and it's really not that bad.
You said you bought a 306, a Cat 306 excavator. And that is, if I remember correctly, what is that? Like a Is that like a
About a
14,000 pound machine?
Yeah, I think the sticker on the side of mine says it's 15,008. So you're almost close to like an 8 ton. Yeah, it's actually kind of a heavy machine. The Cat 306 is a really good first of the machine because you're not into the 305 class and you're not really getting up to the 307s, 8s, and 9s. When you start getting into those weight classes, then you got to start pulling those things on low boys because this thing's just way too much. And, I was only rated to pull with my gooseneck and my dually was around about 18,000 pounds. This is the payload capacity on my gooseneck. So I try to buy the equipment to where I could stay in that weight class and I didn't have to like go out and buy a low boy and do all the fun stuff with DOT and everything like that. So I try to keep it real simple with the two pieces of equipment that I had. That's why I just chose to go with 306. I wanted the biggest machine I could get that I could tow myself. This is what I was shooting for essentially.
Yeah, definitely. My friend, who's an excavator over in Steamboat, Colorado, bought the Bobcat E60, and I believe it's the same. It's a pretty similar size machine. And man, that thing's pretty sweet. We have the E50 because we bounce around to a lot of residential jobs. But there are times when I wish that we would have gone that one step up just for a little bit more oomph on some of the jobs.
Yeah,
But
the 306 is a hoss.
Okay, so the 306 is bigger than the E60. Interesting.
I think it is. I think
Yeah.
it's a little bit bigger than the E60. It's kind of like a little bit, it's very large for its weight class, realistically. And it's actually a very powerful machine, too. Like, it's impressive how stout that 306 is built. I was digging
Really?
up some pretty size stumps with that thing, and it was a great machine. That is a really good excavator.
And so let's talk purchasing of that machine. What was the price of that?
That one was a hundred and what was that thing? I think it was around 125,000 for it.
Okay. And then similar financing structure, 60 months, 0%.
I think it was 60 months at like I think at the time it was like 1.8% or something like that.
And
That was their deal they had on.
what did that put your payment at? Like 3,000 a month?
No, actually that's pretty 1,800.
1,800 for 60 months.
I put money down on that one though.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, I put what's that? I put like either $15,000 or $20,000 down on that machine though. So I only had financing less than like right at 100,000 on that.
Okay. And what was the trigger point at buying that machine? Well, before I even step back into that, where were you in your payoff structure with your skid steer, the Cat 299 with the mulching head? How much had you paid down?
I was about halfway through it at the time. Just about halfway through the payoff structure on that.
And were you taking revenue from that job or profits from that job and were like dumping it back into that payment as you went?
Yeah, as much as I could. So if I had extra money, we would dump it back into the payment. And I was spending a lot of money on advertising at the time too, trying to build it up to try to get to me the next step. So it was a little bit of both. I was putting a lot of money back into the business. When I got the 306, that's when I hired an operator at the time. So at that point in time, I had payroll going. We're doing Facebook marketing. So when I was able to work by myself, I had more money to allocate to put down towards the machine to pay it off a little bit quicker. But when I started hiring operators, that's when I needed more work. And that's when I started spending more money into the business to help grow it, to get more work in and use it for marketing.
For sure. And how many operators do you have right now?
Right now, it's just me.
Okay.
Went back to zero. And that wasn't intentionally done that way, but I went back down to zero. So right now I'm running, 3 different pieces of machinery all by myself. Typically, whatever job I'm going to, I'm taking the mulcher out. I'll run the mulcher. If I'm taking my 953 out, I'll have it moved to a job site. I'll run it by myself. But it's not really intentional that happened. The operator I had working for me, he was with me for a couple of years. He was an older gentleman, and man, he was great, man. This guy had 48 years running equipment. 48 years of operating equipment. And I was able to just leave him on a job and like, hey, here's the site plans. It's all staked out. This is what we're clearing. We're cutting the basement in. Have a nice day. I'm going to go run the mulcher on another job site. And he would just get in there and just knock it out. I had to babysit him. He knew about equipment. He knew about how to stay on grade. And he's actually the reason I know how to run a 953 with his 40 years experience. He showed me a lot of like, hey, I'm going to show you how to run this machine, and you're going to learn from what took me 48 years. I'm probably going to give you a crash course. You'll probably figure it out in 6 months. And he was right. He had me dialed in really fast with that 953. But then he had, I guess, operating for 48 years, he had back surgery, and the doctor told him that he can't go back to work as an operator anymore. So I lost him about 3 months ago, and
Oh
was
man,
there for,
that's a bummer.
yeah, it is a super bummer. So about 3 months ago, I lost him, and he can't run equipment anymore. So I was like, well, that sucks. But long story short, I kind of went back a little bit solo, until I kind of get business back where I wanted it again. I'll hire somebody next year. I'm trying to wait it out the rest of this year just because, this is election year. So it's kind of been a little bit slow for us anyways. So I really can't take on another operator. And the guys that I try to hire, they say they can do this, that, and the other. And you put them on a job and they act like they're in, middle school pretty much the way they work, or they show up late. So I've been having problems trying to get the right kind of guy in ever since Ricky kind of couldn't come back. It was just me and Ricky there for a couple of years, essentially. It was just me and him doing all these jobs by ourselves. And we get in there and just
Dang,
tag team him out and just knock him out quick.
that's a bummer to hear his back surgery. Is he doing good now?
Yeah, he's doing good. He's recovered from it. I think he has a little lawn care business kind of he does now. And he just kind of goes out and mows grass. Does something to keep him busy and keep him active. But yeah, he can't get into another loader ever again unless he wants to have surgery once a year. But
He's that guy that's like pushing the limits, huh? Like doctors told
pretty
him to
much.
get back on the equipment, and he's like, "Well, I'm gonna get on a riding lawnmower."
Yeah, the doctor approved him for a riding lawnmower. He's like, hey, you can probably mow grass. That's not as bouncy as running loaders and pushing trees over with loaders. That's a little bit easier on the body. So that's kind of what he does now. I still talk to him on a regular basis too. So I didn't cut ties with him. He called me up about as sad as it gets, man. He's like, man, he's 60 years old, and man, he's great. He was a great mentor to have for those 2 years I had him, and I learned a lot from him. I believe. I mean, he was just great to have around. I didn't have to babysit him. He taught me a bunch in that 2 years that I had him for. And I thank him every day for it because that's what got me to where the point I'm at now. I know how to operate all these different pieces of equipment because of him.
Yeah, well, man, I wish him the best in recovery. That's always a bummer to hear. So you mentioned the 953. That's a track loader, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, 953 track loader. It's a 2017 D model.
When did you buy that piece? At what point in the business?
I bought it. Let's see. I bought it in June. No. Yeah, I think it was like maybe a little earlier in June, maybe like May of last year. So it actually started off as a rental unit from one of my friends. He rented it to me on this big job that me and Ricky were doing. It was a big 14-acre job. We were clearing out 14 acres for a horse pasture, and we had a lot of dirt to move. We had to build an arena that was 150 by 300, the arena size, and we cut a whole hill down that was 15 feet of dirt down to level on grade, and that's why I was renting it out for a few months. And I was like, man, I really love this machine. Like, this is what I want to get into. And Daniel ended up just selling it to me. He's like, man, if you really want that 953, like, I'll sell it to you. You don't have to rent it anymore. And I was like, I'll take it. So I ended up calling Cat Financial up and say, hey, I found a loader I really like. It's a good unit. It's only got 4,000 hours on it. No emissions on it either, which is another plus for me. And shortly after renting it for a few months, I'm just buying it. So I've had that machine for, what is that, year and a half now, probably, roughly.
And what was the purchase price on that one?
It was 180,000 for it.
And
Because at the time, the market was kind of up on those things. There wasn't a lot of them floating around. Over a year and a half ago, you can probably pick one of those things up now for. It sucks. This is the equipment for you, but you can probably pick one of those things up now for about 120. Somewhere in that area, 130 maybe.
yeah, it's like I'm right there with you, man. I bought my chipper for 180, and it's the same thing. I'm like, dang it, I don't even want to look at the market right now because
Yeah, you
at
don't
the end
want
of
to.
at the end of the day, it just is what it is. You and I had to make decisions to like grow the business at the certain time where we were at. And so I think it's sort of irrelevant to pay attention to that. Like, I think what you and I can focus on is like continuing to just keep the hammer down, paying down the equipment, getting jobs, blocking and tackling out there. This track loader, though, is really cool. I've got it on screen share right now for our listeners. If you guys are watching on video, looks like a sweet piece of equipment. Why did you
Oh
make a
man, that's
decision?
great.
Like what was the before I ask this question, what were the financing terms on that used piece?
That one was, well, it was used, and the rates from the Feds kind of gone up as far as financing goes. So that kind of shot me in the foot a little bit because the economy is the way it's going right now. So it was actually at 8% for 48 months, and the payment on it was $4,000 a month, which is
Yeah,
cheaper than
that
the
was
rent one. That's how I looked at it. I was renting that thing for like $7,000 a month. I was like, well, if I can buy it and own it for $4,000 a month, I get it. There's maintenance involved in it because the undercarriage on those things are like $20,000, $25,000 to replace the undercarriage on it, but it had a brand new undercarriage on it. So I was like, well, I got at least 4,000 hours. Depending on kind of material I'm sitting in, the undercarriage is good for at least 4,000 hours, maybe three if you're getting some more rockier material. So that's why I decided to purchase it because that job that we were on, I mean, we were there for about 10 months on the same project. And I was working the excavator, digging out rock. I had my 299 doing all the final grade for the barn, the pad, the arena, the driveway. I mean, we were out there for almost 10 months on that job. And I just figured, I'm here for 10 months. I can justify the expense of this machine. And then once I got that machine, I felt like once I got my loader, that's when builders took me seriously. Like when I started reaching out to
really
builders, like, hey, I got a loader now and I can get in here and clear his lot out for $8,000 or whatever, or $10,000 to clear his lot out. I felt like the loaders what took me to the next step, and that's when builders really took me seriously because when I was doing some work for builders prior to that, um, with the skid steer and excavator, they're like, the old school builders are looking for guys with loaders. They know how it works. A loader can push the whole tree over, stump and all. You can strip the top of the tree out. You can break it down in half. You get a saw guy on the ground to cut it up in the logs. You can do a lot of work with those things. I mean, I can clear out an acre of trees. I can break it down, strip them down, and clear out an acre in like 2 days with that thing. It's very efficient.
and then I'm sure you're able to use it on the dirt side as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can get once you get the dirt side, you can use it for grubbing. You can use it to dig out the basement. You can use it to rough grade your lot in. I still use the 299 to final grade it out just because it's a little more tuned for final grade than the loader is. But it gets you to that lot clearing, that basement dig out, and that rough grade in. The loader all day long, it's like a Swiss Army knife with the machines. Like there's nothing you can't do with that loader essentially, as far as clearing out lots or land out with it.
All right. So now we've sort of we've talked about your skid steer, your excavator, your mulcher, your loader. Do you have any other pieces of equipment?
Nope, that's the only ones I got. So I got the little Kubota tractor, and that's what started it
Yep.
all. I use it for mowing grass now, but no, that's just the three pieces of equipment I have, and I have one operator. And typically, having one operator with three pieces of equipment, I'll be like, well, you need to find an operator to keep the excavator busy. There's not as much excavator work out there as there is loader work for either a skid steer mulching or a skid steer doing bucket work or a loader clearing out lots. The excavator is just kind of I probably looked at it as more of like an accessory. It's a good backup accessory. If I need to load dumpsters with it or do like a small demo, the excavator doesn't get used as much. It only has, I don't even think about 1,000 hours on it realistically. Where all other machines, average over 1,000 hours a year on each one of them or more. Um, but it's a good unit to have when you do need it.
Now, what would you tell yourself going like what you know now and building up to these three pieces of equipment? I say three because I think your Kubota is probably a hobby machine now, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Um, what would you, if you could go back to like 2020 or 2021, what would be one thing you would tell yourself?
Ooh, that's a good question. If I could go back, 3 or 4 years back, I think I would have stayed in the mulching just a little bit longer, to be honest with you. Because I felt like when I started growing the business and getting more machines, it became more of a headache to keep those machines busy. And I felt like I was making probably more money with one machine by myself than I was making when I had three machines and had an operator working for me. And I think I would have stuck it out just a little bit longer with just running a mulcher, just running it a little bit longer and just doing small dirt work jobs and small backyard grading jobs. I think I kind of wish I would have stuck out just a little bit longer before I decided to grow, but then I kept hitting opportunities, and it's a love-hate relationship. Like you get across the opportunity to where you think you can grow your business and you hope you can grow your business off of it. And I hate to turn down opportunities. It's like, man, do I buy this loader? Do I buy this excavator? Can I make money off of it? Can I get it, can I get it out in the field and make me some money? Or do I just kind of stay small scale working by myself where I don't have to worry about operators? I don't have to worry about these bigger projects. I don't have to worry about dealing with builders and, reading out site plans and taking care of road control systems and all that kind of stuff. There's more headache involved in it. That's the only part about growing your business is that the bigger you get, the more headache you're going to have, you know. Um, and I kind of just wish I would have stayed with mulching just a little bit longer, maybe like another year or two before I decided to expand it out and grow it.
And is that purely driven off the premise that you want to pay down that piece of equipment before saying yes to more equipment?
Yes and no. So yes, to kind of pay down equipment a little bit faster, which would have helped, but also just to kind of gain a little bit larger clientele base, because they say, the first 5 years of business, you're going to spend a lot of money on marketing, and they say after your 5-year period is when you're going to get a lot more repeat referral customers. So you figure I'm right at the 5-year mark roughly. So it's just now starting to roll around to where I'm getting the repeats, the referral customers, to where I didn't have that a couple of years ago. I was just dumping money into campaigns as much as I could to grow and get as much work as I can. And we're talking about dumping money. We're talking about, $25,000, $30,000 a year on Facebook campaigns and stuff like that, and other marketing companies, just to help keep it moving forward. So I think that's kind of like I said, it's a little bit of both. It's like I wish I could have stayed into a little bit longer where I can make a little bit more money to get it paid down and have more money set to the side, and just help me grow my clientele base a little bit stronger before I decide to go dive off into another section of it, which I don't have any regrets for it, but I kind of wish I was stuck at just a smidge longer. Being big isn't all that great. Like people think it's like, oh, I got 10 pieces of equipment or I got 50 pieces of equipment. Yeah, the more you have, the more headache you get with it, though. And being a owner operator with one machine, it's just simple back in the day, man. Only person I had to worry about was myself. I didn't have to worry about operators that didn't know what they were doing, or an older guy that had back problems. And then trying to find somebody to replace him, which is probably going to be almost impossible realistically. But I did like being kind of a solo side of things. It was a little bit easier on me, stress wise.
Sure. Well, that person's out there. I'm confident they are. If you want, if you do decide that you want to rehire on that, you mentioned marketing. So whenever you first reach out, you haven't been afraid of investing in the marketing since the beginning. And
no, never.
How much of that? Like, it sounds like you had a decision made from the beginning that you were going to invest in that. Like, how much of that is an indicator of where you're at today?
As far as how much I spend in marketing?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The question may have been a little unclear. It's like, so I think some people will reach out and they'll say like, hey, I'm unsure on whether or not I should spend money on marketing or not. When I was growing my business, it was just a non-negotiable. I'm like you have to spend money on marketing. Like, it's just an expense of the business. And it sounds like you share the same belief. My question for you is more like, since you made that decision, you are where you're at now because of your ability to like make the decision and invest the money in the marketing. Like, do you think that you would be in the same place had you not invested time in those yard signs, in those Facebook ads, in the marketplace listings?
No, I do not think I would be in the same place. The people that think they can just start a business up without branding their company, gaining a reputation and building up a clientele base, I don't think that's possible today. And the reason why is because I feel like there's too much information in front of us. Now, maybe back 20 or 30 years ago, where people had to find you in a phone book and, find businesses that way, or through postcards, or so on and so forth, or a lot of people just have referrals back in the 90s and early 2000s. But I think now information is too close to our fingertips. People scrolling through Google or people scrolling through Facebook, they're going to find that company a lot faster through a platform like Google or social media than they are about asking their friends. I feel like asking your friends was a thing of the past, honestly. 30 years ago, Bob can go up to Steven and like, hey man, I need to get some forestry mulching done. You know anybody? That I can see happening back in the day, but now it's just like everybody has cell phones that right at their fingertips and they're just scrolling through constantly. And they may not think they need your services until they see your video or your ad that popped up. Like, you know what? That's a great idea. Let me get this guy here to forestry mulch my 10 acres and let's get it thinned out. The information is just, it's too close to us in order not to grow your business using those type of platforms. I think it's just something you have to do if you want to grow your business. It costs a lot of money. It takes money to make money, but if somebody's trying to start their business up by word of mouth or just hoping that the word gets around fast enough to where they can grow their business, hey, great for them. But I find it hard to believe that somebody can grow their business fast enough by using word of mouth and keeping it real simple and cheap versus guys like me and you that are spending thousands of dollars on different platforms to where, hey, that client's right at your fingertips now. They can call you immediately. They can see your type of work you do. They can read your reviews about what kind of company you are. All this information is all at a cell phone or a laptop or an iPad or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you have to spend money in order to grow a business. I don't think there's really a way around it nowadays, honestly.
Yeah, and it's just crazy how many people or how much people are scrolling on their phones today. And so the other thing that's just blown my mind is if we just give money to Facebook and Instagram or Meta on paid ads, it's like they're putting our ads in front of the people who are ready to buy. Josh told me that you did recently sign up with Land Service Marketers. And he told me about like the first week of your campaign. He was mentioning that you got, was it like 8 or 9 leads in the first
Yeah,
week?
it's like 8 or 9 leads in the first week. So it's performing pretty well. And the leads thing is tricky because you have to kind of like, I wouldn't say cold calling, but you have to call within a reasonable amount of time. And you have to do a lot of follow-ups, and that's the kind of the part where I talked to Josh about this yesterday. I kind of struggle in that department, to be honest with you. As far as when I get a lead in on my phone, it's sometimes I get busy. I don't call them right away, or I feel like if I call somebody more than one time, I feel like I'm bugging them. I feel like I'm desperate trying to find their work for them. So I have to get outside my comfort zone a little bit as far as when I get a lead through, like, hey, let me call this guy. Let me call him again. They didn't respond. This is a good lead or this is a bad lead. But we're only in the first week of running those campaigns. So typically, after that 10-day mark, we'll see adjustments and improvements with the lead campaign, and we'll see what it does. And hopefully it'll pick up where those leads come in. I call them, they answer immediately, like, hey, I need this, this, and this. And cool, that job is, I'll go look at it, we'll sell it, and let's get it going on the books. But yeah, that's the only part of struggle with the lead campaign, though. It's hard to bug people enough to get them to answer the phone sometimes.
Has he set up the automation for you to where the lead information is texted to your phone?
Yeah. So the lead information comes straight to my phone, and it goes on the application too that they use, and then I also get an email forward as well. So I get it in 3 different ways, so I know when it comes through. And I've had quite a few people answer. I think so far I'm like at 11 leads right now, and Saturday will be the 1 week mark. I think I'm at 11 or 12 leads. Out of 11 or 12, I had probably about 4 actual of them answer the phone, and the rest I've called them and texted them and left voicemails. I haven't heard back from them yet. So I kind of figured that was going to happen that first week. It's just you gotta dial the algorithm in before you start really getting those qualified leads. And maybe that's something I need help with too, is learning how to follow up a little bit better or call more than one time without trying to come off a little bit desperate, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the way that we view it internally, and I've just set this expectation with our team, it's like we are spending dollars on getting these leads. So our sales and estimator, it's like when I was doing sales and estimating, that is the most important thing on my list. So it's like the second I get the lead, I literally click the phone number and I call immediately. Hey, it's Austin with Bear Claw Land Services. I just saw that you filled out the form on the website. And then I just stop. And then most people's response will be, oh my gosh, that was fast. You guys are fast. And it's like, yes, we're committed to delivering 5-star service and it starts now. And so like we've seen a ton of success in closing jobs by being fast on the phones. And so if there's anything I can recommend for all the listeners right now, if you're paying for leads, be as fast as you possibly can. Like literally within 10 seconds of getting that lead on your phone. personally, I didn't care if I was operating a skid steer, an excavator, or anything. Like I stopped the machine, I clicked it, I jumped out of the machine. Hi, this is Austin with Bear Claw. Saw that you filled out the form. Just wanted to see if you have any questions for me, right? And then people are just like blown away at that point. So getting the site visit booked is really easy whenever it's top of mind for people. What I've learned is if we let that lead sit for even 5 or 10 or 30 minutes or an hour, people are so busy and so distracted in this day and age. So like if they're scrolling Facebook and you hit them and they're like, oh yeah, I need fire mitigation, or I need land clearing, or I need forestry mulching, it's top of mind for them right there. And if we hit them right then when they're thinking about it, they are more likely to book a site walk with us. Whereas if we wait, that person has already scrolled down to the next ad in Instagram or the next ad in Facebook or the next, their grandma's posted her new dentures getting put in or something, and now commenting on it. Looks great, right? Now they're on the phone with their grandma. Like that's how people in this day and age work. And if we're calling them when they're on their phone with grandma, they're not gonna answer our phone. So I continue to reiterate this, and we have our project manager and estimator is incredible at what he does, and he's doing a great job of this. But it's like that is the most important thing for whoever's owning that role in the business, at least in my opinion. So I wanted to share that with the listeners. Like if you're paying for leads, it's going to be wasted money if you don't just immediately jump on it and call them. And so, yeah, I would.
Leads that come in at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, though.
If they come in at 10, 11 o'clock at night, I'm asleep. I go to bed at like 8. I'm an old man. So I definitely don't do it, but I'll hit them first thing in the morning when I wake up.
Yeah, that's how I've been doing it too. I get a lot of leads late. I guess just late night, people are scrolling, on Facebook, probably sitting in bed. And I'll call them first thing in the morning, when my business hours kind of start, I'll give them a call. And I try to call as quick as I can. But then, like yesterday, I was on the phone with Josh. And, right after I got the phone, we got a lead come in. And he texted me. He's like, go ahead and call him right now. And I called him immediately. It was within 10 seconds. And it was a no answer. And I was like, okay, well, I'll leave him a voicemail and I'll shoot him a text and I'll follow back up with him again. And maybe they just get busy. I thought about maybe trying maybe another strategy too. If we really do get busy, I thought about maybe creating almost like a contact card with my name and number, almost like a picture. I can just text them, and that way they just have it on text message of the company, the services, and everything, to where they know who they called. I just haven't came up with the idea how I'm going to do it yet. So people who just don't have time to answer or just forget about it, just to try to send them out a text message with like some kind of contact card to kind of remind them that, hey, you filled out my lead form. We're available to talk anytime. Here's our contact info. As a reminder, I just haven't came up with a concept how I'm going to do it just yet, though.
I think you're on the right track with that because people are so distracted in this day and age. The next thing that I would, the next thing I want to talk about here and just share with the listeners that I've used before, and a lot of people, are going to be like, oh, I'm not going to do that. Whatever, that's cheesy. In the beginning, it was hard for me to get on video. I just knew that I had to push through that because this is my business. And at the end of the day, I want to look back 10 years from now and know I left everything on the table. So like one thing I've done in the past is I'll just do a quick video. Hey, it's Austin from Bear Claw Land Services. I saw you filled out the form. I'll be wearing like my branded Bear Claw hat. You wear your branded ARE shirt, right? Like make sure they can see your logo. I just wanted to send this quick video and let you know that we do X, Y, and Z services. And I also want to let you know I'm available for any questions whenever you have them. Let me know when a good time to give you a call back is. We're moving into this age of where people get so many emails, so many texts, so many social media responses that like, I believe the people who can do the most personalized approaches in sales are the people who are going to get the most responses. And so
that's a good idea.
It's actually how so funny enough, I'll share this. Like Josh, my agency partner, and who the same guy who's running your ads, used this direct cold outreach strategy whenever he cold emailed me in the beginning. It was a very personalized video message. And so I took note of that of like, wait, that worked on me. So why wouldn't that work whenever I'm talking to my customers as well?
So you did it as a video and just text it?
Just a quick, I mean, you got to keep it under like 30 seconds so that it will text on your
Yeah.
iPhone. But just a quick, hey, it's Carl with ARE. It just saw that you filled out the form on our website. We do land clearing, grading, forestry mulching. Just wanted to let you know that I'm available for any questions whenever you have time for a call.
I'll give that a try. Actually, I'll do that today, actually, and put together a little video where I can just kind of send it out that way. That way they have more of a personalized message. Actually, it's a really good idea. That's kind of the concept I was thinking of, but I thought I'd do more of an image. But you're right, like you said, people get so many text messages from spam and all these spam emails nowadays. People just kind of scroll through it and just look at it as a spam. But if it's more of a video, it makes it more personal. And I always felt like you got to get personal with your clients and build a relationship up with them and trust before they're willing to spend money with you.
That's right. And you've already mentioned it. Like I can already tell you're probably incredible on your site visits. Like people can immediately feel that you're going to be a trustworthy guy, and it's because you do the right thing, right? Like you were telling me earlier.
Oh yeah, yeah. As far as being fair with pricing, I usually have a pretty good. If I can get in front of the client, if I can get them to return my phone call or answer me back, usually if I get to a site visit, I would say 9 times out of 10, I typically get that job. Just because I like to build up a relationship with my clients. A lot of times I use other strategies to build up a relationship too, which would be like I notice he has golf clubs in his back seat, or he is a Georgia Bulldog fan, or something like that. I used to try to make small talk with clients. I don't spend a lot of time talking to them about it. I try to keep my site visits kind of brief, within 30 minutes to an hour per site visit. But I always find something to conversate to them about. To say, hey, I'm just a guy like you are, man. Like I like golfing too. I like football or whatever, and let's look at your property. Let's see what I can do to help you out. And I honestly, that just immediately creates a level of trust. We're like, hey man, this guy's a pretty cool guy, man. He'll sit here and just kind of talk to you like a regular person. Like it takes that sales pressure away. Like you're a used car salesman. Like I'm just trying to sell you work. I tell people that too. Like, if something I don't recommend doing, I don't have a problem telling a client that. Like I have clients that have these bizarre ideas about trying to grade something out on the side of a hill. I'm like, look, I'll be honest with you. You can spend a lot of money doing that, but it's not going to be very effective. Like I have a more effective way that you can do it. That's more cost effective and it'll save you a ton of money. Like I'm not here just to sell as much work as I can. I'm here to deliver a, upper class priority type work where you're getting what you need, and I'm being straightforward with you about the type of work you need done. And I think just telling people how it is and being a straight shooter about projects, it helps.
It goes a long way, that's for sure.
Oh
well,
yeah.
Well, Carl, I have really enjoyed having you on. It's so fun to see someone like yourself start from just a stump grinder and then grow into what you've grown today. And I'm really excited to watch your future growth as well. So one thing I like to do with podcast guests is we've had you on for this first episode right now. I'd like to have you back on in 6 to 12 months so that you can do an update episode so that our listeners can hear sort of how you've grown your business since the time of this publishing and the time we bring you back on in the second. Is there anything else before we wrap this episode up that you would like to share with our listeners? What advice would you give them if they're starting up?
Probably the best thing I can always recommend to anybody that's starting up is don't get discouraged. When you stop hustling and stop trying is when you're going to probably end up failing. And you're probably going to, at some point in time, everybody's going to fail. The difference between failing and being successful and just failing and being unsuccessful is the guys that fail get up and try it again. And they try a different strategy. And I've always felt that's how I've always run all my businesses, is that this idea may not work. I may have lost money on it. I failed at this, but you know what? I'm going to keep on trying and try it until I get it right. And not getting discouraged is like the best thing ever. Because you're at some point, any business owner, startup guys, you're going to fail at some point, and like I said, it's just if you can get back up and continue to try, continue to hustle and grind and keep yourself moving forward and not look back like, well, I wish I would have done this differently. No, just keep moving forward and keep trying your hardest and just don't give up. The guys that give up are guys that go out of business. And that's pretty much what I can say for all the new guys out there that are trying to get into this industry. It's like, it's going to be tough, and the difference between you and the other business person you're competing against is how fast is he going to give up versus how fast will you not give up,
That's awesome advice. Thank you for sharing. Where can people find your business website?
Sure. Yeah. So if you just go to Google. The website is arelandmanagement.com, and then go through and check it out.
And how about social media?
Social media is what is it? I think it's ARE Land Management as well on social media.
Facebook, Instagram.
Yep. All ARE Land Management on Facebook, Instagram, ARE on the website, ARE Land Management on the website as well.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks again for being on, Carl. And listeners, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Owner Ops podcast, where we bring on other service-based business owners and we talk all things growing local service-based businesses. If you are enjoying these episodes, and if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, we would sure appreciate a 5-star review. We talk about how important getting 5-star reviews are in this day and age for our local service businesses on Google. And very similar to local service businesses, podcasts are the same in the sense that 5-star reviews are important. So if you're enjoying it, we would sure appreciate you taking 30 seconds to leave us a 5-star review. And if you're listening on YouTube, we'd sure appreciate a like and subscribe to the channel so that you will get notified whenever we do drop new episodes. At this point, we're publishing an episode each week, and we are very appreciative of the support you guys have given us. So thanks again for listening. Don't forget, work hard, do your best, never settle for less. We'll see you guys next week.
I wanted to introduce you to two of my growth partners. Striker Digital specializes in SEO services specifically for local service businesses. Bodie and Andy, the two co-founders, have helped me get Bear Claw Land Services to the #1 search result on Google inside my state for my specific search term. If you want to learn more, visit strikerdigital.com. That's STRYKER-digital.com. Secondly, Local Service Marketers specializes in paid ads and unlimited content creation. I've been working with Josh since the beginning of Bear Claw, and all I've had to do is upload my content, photos and video, into a shared iCloud album or Google Drive album, and they handle everything else from there. Think YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all that is taken off of your plate. It saves you so much time as a local business owner. In doing so, you end up with a very professionally designed social media presence. After the presence is created, then a paid ad strategy can be implemented to help bring you more leads and win you more jobs. If you're interested in learning more, you can visit localservicemarketers.com.